mentioned what you were saying for your introduction, but I can't hear because of our echo.
Good evening. My name is Ruth Beutler. I'm the Media Events Coordinator for the Never Again Coalition. And on behalf of Never Again and all our partners, I'm so happy to welcome you to tonight's discussion around the film Sema. Our partners include Portland State University's Holocaust and Genocide Studies Project, Amnesty International USA Group 48, World Oregon, and the Oregon Jewish Museum and Center for Holocaust Education. And again, would like to thank the Oregon Jewish Museum and Amber Curson for providing our tech platform and logistic support for tonight. We have several additional partners specific to the Sema screening that I'd like to go ahead and thank. They include the Panzi Foundation, Panzi Hospital, the Dr. Denis Mukwege Foundation, Panzi Foundation USA, Action Kivu, Every Woman Treaty, Alliance for Peacebuilding, and Enough Project. This is the third in a three-part series. Don't worry if you've missed either of our previous films or the discussions. They all have been recorded and they'll remain available on our website, which is neveragaincoalition.org/risingup. Our third and final conversation of this series takes as its starting point the very, very moving and powerful film Sema, which we are presenting tonight courtesy of the National Movement of Survivors of Sexual Violence in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We're so grateful to be part of this. I spoke a bit at the beginning of the series about how we chose these films and how important it was that each one grows out of a personal lived experience and an artist or a performer expressing that experience and sharing it. Like for Sema and I'm Rohingya, Sema takes a very unique approach to its story, and it does it in a way that is both completely grounded in its own context and also speaks to very broad global realities. And like our other two films, Sema is also very clear about calling not only for an end to violence, but for justice. I'd like to share a brief quote from Tatiana Mukwege, who is the national coordinator of the survivors movement of DRC and was the production secretary for Sema. And I think this really encapsulates the vision of the film. Armed conflict, which brings genocide and the use of rape as a weapon of war, must stop. It is our dearest wish, and today it is our fiercest fight. So that our children live in a better Congo, a Congo without rape, a Congo in peace. So that these rapists can no longer act with impunity and without justice doing its job. So that all the victims of these atrocities can obtain reparations. We unite as the National Movement of Survivors of the DRC, and we encourage all of our sisters and brothers to stand with us. This powerful invitation from Tatiana also reminds me how eloquently director Yusuf Seen from the I Am Rohingya film spoke last week about how the reality that once we witness a story of atrocity or genocide, we become responsible to respond. That's why our programming always includes discussions around films that might bring us to challenging subjects, so that we have an opportunity to absorb and contextualize what we've seen and allow us to reflect on how these stories might move us personally to act in supporting both peace and justice. We're extremely, extremely honored to be allowed to participate in this work with the film Sema. And we're also so privileged to have with us tonight the director of production for the film, Maud-Salomé Ekila. She is a Congolese documentarian, journalist, and a Pan-Africanist militant. Most of her documentary work focuses on the history of Africa and people of African descent. She is an activist fighting impunity and marginalization of Africans around the world. Maud is a communication officer for the National Movement of Survivors of Sexual Violence in the DRC, has been working with Dr. Denis Mukwege since 2012, and in 2018 also joined the team of the Dr. Denis Mukwege Foundation. Joining Maud tonight in conversation, we're also so pleased to welcome Johana Amani. Johana was born and raised in the Democratic Republic of Congo until the age of 10. From then on, her family lived as refugees in Nairobi, Kenya, until they were granted asylum in the US in 2016. Johana is currently majoring in international development at the University of Oregon. And welcoming Maud and Johana into conversation will be our moderator, Aerlyn Pfeil. Aerlyn is a local to Portland midwife and sexual violence specialist. She's worked around the world in many different contexts with Doctors Without Borders, or MSF, including South Sudan, Haiti, Senegal, the Somali region of Ethiopia, Papua New Guinea, and led MSF's first ever emergency response to sexual violence in Bangladesh in 2017 during the Rohingya refugee crisis. Thank you all so much for being with us tonight, and Aerlyn, I'll let you take it from here.
Thanks, Ruth Ann. Can we see the screen of the other participants? There you go. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I just want to start off with a question for Maud. Could you tell us more about the movement of survivors of sexual violence in DRC and how that movement got started?
Hi, everyone. Do you hear me? Yes, okay. I'm very happy to be with all of us, all of you guys. So the movement was in 2017, Dr. Denis Mukwege has decided to extend his fight, which was first very centered in DRC, at an international level by creating the Dr. Denis Mukwege Foundation. And the goal of this foundation was really to fight against rape used as a weapon of war. And so survivor activists from all over the world, from Kosovo, Guinea, Mali, Colombia, Bangladesh, and of course other countries, but also DRC, was put together. They meet together, and they have created in their own countries, if it wasn't already the case, like group of movements to fight against rape as a weapon of war. And there is some country where this kind of national movement already existed, like Guinea, but it wasn't the case in DRC. And so this will from Dr. Mukwege to encourage women to speak for themselves and by themselves, sometimes men, sometimes kids, was really strong. And it was a great wish that they can express themselves for themselves. And so that's how the movement was born. The national movement was born in DRC in 2017. And it was in the same dynamic of the born of this national network of survivors. And this international mondial movement of survivors, the name of this movement is also Sema, the same name that the movie, and it is because Sema means speak out in Swahili, and this is the mother language of Dr. Denis Mukwege, and it was a very perfect name for the international network. So this is why sometimes maybe I will mention Sema as the international network, and then Sema as the movie of the national movement of the survivor of the DRC. Yeah, so this is basically what happened with the creation of the movement.
And can you speak to what inspired the making of the film?
Of course. So this situation, the special context that we live for more than 20 years now in DRC, we have a lot of problem of stigmatization. So the first goal was really to be focused on the national audience, on the national audience. When it was not to go all over the world with the movie festival, but really to be focused on what's happening in the country and touch directly the people inside the country. So it was to trigger a true awareness, and in the village, to make people understand how is it to face their own behavior, when they stigmatize a survivor, or when they reject or insult a child born of rape. So when we did when more than 60 women of the movement decided to write the scenario for the movie, all the subjects that was put in the table were really there, what they face every day, and what this survivor face every day. And for example, it was really important to make a list, and really to know that we will talk about the child born of rape, how policemen are renting their uniform, make their uniform rent because they need more money. They are not enough paid, and so it makes that situation happen, like you can see in the movie. Also the stigmatization, which is probably the hardest problem that survivor face in the east of DRC and in the world. So also there is a lot of different subject that was really important for them to put in the movie, and to explain to their community what's happening inside them and what they have to face every day as a survivor.
Yeah, thank you. I think just as we get into this, that it would be good to have a bit of a disclosure. I'm sure that most of the people who are joining us this evening have already watched the film. But as you may have already heard, unless you're just joining us now, we are talking about sensitive topics. So just making sure that whoever is listening and joining us for the Q&A, make that you are also taking care of yourselves. And if this topic becomes overwhelming to anyone, feel free to do some self-care and take a little break. Join us later if that feels okay for you. Johana, I wonder if you could just share with us about your background and what prompted you to participate in this panel, and why you also feel that this film is important, or this topic is important.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Like I was introduced, my name is Johana Amani. I live in Portland, Oregon. I was born and raised in Congo, DRC. We lived in Congo, DRC, my family. In 2010, when I was 10 years old, we had to move. We had to go find a new place. So we went to Nairobi, Kenya, where we lived for 6 years as refugees. And so in Congo, I was born and raised. I spoke French, and moving to Kenya, I had to adopt learning Swahili and also speaking English when we went to school. And so we lived in Kenya for 6 years, and that's where I learned English. And we came to the United States once we got asylum in 2016. And I'm currently a student at the University of Oregon studying international development. And and my main goal after finishing school is I want to go back and work in my home country, Congo, DRC. But one problem I face is that because there's so many problems, and I think from the movie Sema, you can see that there is a lot of things happening within the community. So there is education, there is infrastructure, there is who's held accountable for what they do. For example, like also with the police officers, what they were doing, with the court also bribing, corruption, and all those things. And so for me, it's been hard as going to college, deciding on a major or picking a specific field that I want to go into, because consciously I know that there's not just one problem that needs a solution, there is several of them. And so when I heard about the movie Sema, I didn't believe it, because every movie I've watched, every time I go on social media, there's always negative things about Congo, and there's never really reality, something that I relate to and say, this is true, this is what I've lived through, this is what I've seen. But when I was watching Sema, I was personally very impressed, and I was actually happy I mean, the context of the movie doesn't make anyone happy, but I was just happy to see that, wow, this is reality that is now being broadcasted and people can actually watch and see. And oftentimes when people hear, oh, I'm from Congo, they think, oh, Congo, there's war over there, that's why you probably left. No, but in reality, there is a bunch of different things. There is also how Sema portrays it. There is a lot of different things that lead to people leaving Congo to becoming refugees. It's not just war. There's a lot of different things. And so when after I watched the movie, I was like, okay, this is amazing. And I want to be able to be part of the discussion that talks more about the movie and also about just in general about the things that go on in Congo that's not just about war. And so,
and I think we'll touch on some of those things later in this conversation. So in my experience as a medical practitioner in providing sexual violence care for survivors of sexual violence, it's become more and more clear to me how widespread violence towards women and girls and men as well is around the world. I find it particularly interesting in the research for 2019 shows that the migrant and refugee populations are experiencing high levels of exploitation and extreme control, forced prostitution, lack of access to health services, which you guys touch on in the film, the lack of access to post-rape prophylaxis, so the prevention of pregnancy and HIV. Yeah, and I just wonder if, Maud, you could touch a bit on what that actual situation looks like in DRC and what makes that a unique experience or place in the context of this big global movement of refugees and migrants and the high level of violence that they're experiencing.
So in DRC, we are typically in a classic schema of making profits to explain the context of the war, and I can call it a genocide on our mamas, and so there are raw materials in the soil that interest multinationals for the manufacture of mobile phone, of laptops, other electronic machines that were made essential by the consumer society. And we have documented a lot of attacks, for example, of village in the east of the country, where women and kids are raped, and where the whole village has to leave because their houses was burned and they were threatened. And when you come back to the same place few times later, you see an artisanal mine. So the goal of making people run away was to create a mine and exploiting the soil. This is, to explain a little bit the context. Now, after more than 20 years, you have people who are 20 years old, and so they never lived something else than war. And for them, rape a woman is just like normal, because in 20 years of atrocities, you have created a sick society with sick people inside, and with kids that have seen their mother or sister being raped in front of them. So the origin of the perpetrators were very clear at the beginning. But now you have also Congolese that rape inside the country. You have Rwandese also that say that they are Congolese. You have a brand new narrative that makes the situation very complex to understand. The biggest genocide of history, the transatlantic slave trade of millions of Africans deported to the Americas, and of course the colonization, of the African countries, it was always the same economic perspective to make profits. And the human being has no place in this calculation. I mean, no value, and this is absolutely the case in DRC. The situation is lasting for more than 20 years now, but you still don't have a reparation system to protect and recognize the victim of sexual violence. Obtaining justice is very difficult. And when you denounce it, like Dr. Mukwege is doing from day one, you are in danger. Dr. Mukwege is like a prisoner in his own hospital right now. And how can you be in danger in your own country because you say that you can't keep going to do reconstructive surgery to women, and then you have to make, reconstructive surgery to the daughter of this woman and to the daughter of this woman, and then the same woman, and so on. So these,
and Maud, the reconstructive surgery that you're talking about is, I'm assuming, is fistula, right, repairs because of
yes,
because of how traumatic the assaults are.
Exactly. So the trauma on the body most of the time is that the perpetrators insert like knives or guns inside the vagina, and it creates, a communication between the rectum and the vagina. And so, and I mean, it can be, of course, worse. You are totally destroyed inside. And so those women, those babies, because we have babies of 4 months old, having, living that kind of situations, of course, you need a very, serious reparation inside your body, and so reconstructive surgery. This is why we are talking about really reconstructive surgery.
Yeah, which can take months, right? And you have to have a certain level of nutrition in order to heal.
Yeah, how the hospital of Panzi that received every day till now between 5 and 7 women every day for sexual violence. When they arrived, they are first take care by you have 4 pillars. We have 4 pillars of organization in the hospital of Panzi and in our different projects. And you have the psychological pillar, which is very important. That's the first one when you arrive in this kind of one-stop center. When we call it one-stop center. When you arrive, you will be you will have access to the psychological pillar first. Then you will have probably a surgery, so the medical pillar. And after that, you will have the opportunity to enter a program to have reinsertion, economical reinsertion training in different in different domain. Then you can restart, a new life after that. And you have also the legal, the juridic pillar, and to obtain justice against your perpetrator. And so this is very complete, and it was really very important to do it like that. Dr. Mukwege has decided to create the model of Panzi because it was not possible to just imagine that you can have a medical assistance and then it's finished. It's not finished after that. You have to take care of your brain, of your mental health, and and the legal pillar was really the last step. This recognition that you are a victim and not responsible of something. It is very important because, as you may know, most of the victim people who are living that kind of situation, sexual violence, they always think that they are maybe responsible for something, instead of being and seeing themselves as a victim. And that's the same for the community, for the society around. People, they always have the intention to point the survivors.
Yeah, and I think you guys, you see that you explore some of that in Sema, both the impact of fistula and the need for psychological support and economic support, but you also explore the impact of sexual violence on the community, and the way that a community also might carry that stigmatization, as part of the experience of the community. And I'm curious, Johana, like what your reflection of that is as someone who left Congo, I think you said when you were 10, and then lived in refugee camps, where also we see higher levels of violence for similar reasons, right? Lack of economic support, lack of education, lack of access to the things that I think most of us take for granted. I'm wondering if you can maybe touch on some of the other hardships that women and young girls might face.
So for me, I just want to clarify that, just to make it know that. So for me, I was born and raised in Congo, but I was raised in the city. So it was not in the villages or and so in the city, I was able to go to school. I got an education. So I would like to say that my upbringing was a little bit different compared to those who live in villages. But also at the same time, it was still in Congo. And so there was still the same form of problems and similar type of oppression that would happen. So I was the oldest of all my siblings. And yes, I went to good schools and I learned French. Like I was being taken care of at home, but at the same time, I was being sexually assaulted by my uncle, who we live in the same house. And so there was a problem with that, because there was the fear that who do I tell? Because first of all, I live in a house where the man has the final say. And so if I say something, it will be denied or go under the carpet. And at the same time, there's a lot of pressure too of like preserving the family image. And so we don't have bring. So for me growing up, I had to, I had to endure the things that I would go through inside the house. But when I would go outside, I would have to act as if everything is normal. And I remember growing up, I had this neighbor who, like for me, I would go to school and everything, but for her parents could not afford to take her to school. And so she'd always stay home and everything. And so when I think about it, is that social classes were different, but in terms of both of us being young girls in Congo was really problematic, because there was so much that was happening in our surroundings. Now, when I was in Congo, I was under the age of 10, and so I didn't really understand a lot. When I moved to Nairobi, Kenya, that's when I was able to tell my mom about my uncle. That's when we went, I got tested if I had any form of STDs and all that. And lucky for me, I didn't contract anything. But living in Kenya as a refugee without knowing the language, without knowing anyone, just me, my sister, and my mom, it was, I don't want to say it was terrible, but it was a different experience, because you're coming from a different country with all these traumas, and you're not being accepted there because you don't have the legal documents to stay there. You don't know how to speak the language. You can't defend yourself. You can speak up for yourself. And also, it's how do you make everything seem normal again after moving from a country where your voice is shut down to a country where, yeah, maybe you could speak a little bit, but who knows what will happen. And so having moved from Congo to Kenya, I always tell people, I always see a big difference. Yes, they're both in Africa, but the difference from Central to East is very different because in the opportunities I got in Kenya were, I want to say there were more, there were just a lot more resources for refugees. And for me and my family, we didn't live in refugee camps. We also moved and went and lived in a city. So we were not in refugee camps with the other refugees who lived in Kenya. And so our experience was a little bit different, but we still lived with the fear of, what if people from Congo find us here? Are we being targeted? There was a lot of insecurities. And then finally, after 6 years, we got asylum to come to the United States. When we got here, and everything going into perspective for me. But before that, it took a while because I had, my life basically was in pieces from moving from Congo, where I kind of basically lived a double life where I had my own stress and I was depressed, and going to school and making everything seem normal, but also, and then moving to Kenya where I had to adapt to this new life, and then coming to the US where it's like, you can basically do whatever you want. And so there is a lot of hardships. And every time I compare myself to other women, other girls who are in Congo, and realize, I don't want to say I'm lucky, but I want to say that I had it better, because I talked to my family members who are still in Congo, the girls, my nieces and cousins, and they tell me what they're going through, and it's really unbelievable. And so for me, I can't say I've had the worst of the worst situations. I've had my own share of struggles, but it gets worse.
And Maud, you're over here nodding, like very much, it seems like, understanding and relating to this story that Johana is sharing with us. And I guess for me, it makes me think about how important sharing our stories as survivors is, having both your experience witnessed, but also having the opportunity to express what happened in your own time and in your own words. And I think it would just be interesting if you could speak to that part of the importance of Sema, and how, even here tonight, it's opening up this dialogue about storytelling, right? And even when those stories are challenging and traumatic, and may take a long time for us to really heal from.
Yeah, it's first, this movie was supposed to be a documentary, but the idea of making a fictional movie, it was very important that the movements can do it like that, because when you are making a documentary, you cannot show some part of the story, and so people cannot really understand what you go through. And the fact that it's a fictional movie, it was possible then to recreate, for example, the rape scene, and it was really a therapy for the survivors of the movement to make this movie, to make this shooting. It was very emotional. When I'm thinking about all the making of part of the movie, it was so emotional at every level, but in the same time, it was really important. I was very surprised when all the survivors have decided to to play in the movie as actors, because it means that they will have to replay what they have experienced. And it was, I mean, I was afraid sometimes to how it can happen. So we had a psychologist on the shooting, but the fact that after all you have a movie that explains really what they have experienced, it is really strong. When they show now the movie in the communities or in the city, or but in their community, it is very powerful. I remember this scene. For those who have seen the movie, this is one of the most emotional scene. But this is when Matumani burst out of anger and talk about how it is unfair to treat his son by this way. And when we say cut, because we have used all the person of the village when we were, it was a real village. And of course there was some men playing figuration. And after this scene, when we say cut, it was actually a one-shot scene. And we were all in tears, but also men, because it was the first time they had to face the story, but with the words of the survivor. It was another perspective for them. And most of the time women are very silent. I was, because what you have to understand is that I am from the capital, and in the capital of the country, because DRC is a really big country, I am from a province where it is really, women are the chief of the family. And this is a different culture that you can find in the east of the country, where you have all these atrocities. I mean, we have also atrocities in the rest of the countries, but this is what the east of the country is experiencing for more than 20 years now. Is absolutely incredible. And what I would like to say is that for me, it was, when I arrived in the east of the country, it was absolutely, I mean, I was so surprised to see how much women were, I mean, it's a patriarchal, system, and the machismo of the men is absolutely incredible. And and especially as a Pan-Africanist, I don't like to share that that face of my country or of the continents, especially when I speak to other countries in the world. But in this case, with the east of the country, in the village, but also in the cities, the machismo is so, I mean, so big that we cannot, just leave it like that and try to, make people understand more. It is totally different. And so the movie, making the movie like that, it helps, I think, all the survivors that was involved, all the survivors from the movement that was involved on the making of, on the realization of this movie. It helps a lot. Some decided to speak out just after, because you have also survivors inside the movement that for whom it's very hard to speak out till now. And I think that it maybe helps to go on this way, the way of breaking silence.
Johana, you have anything you want to add to that? I know you were part of the immigrant story, and so I'm curious, like what your experience is with both storytelling, but also seeing, art and media from about the Congo from the outside, and how you feel that might contribute to voices being heard and perspectives being shared, and and an element of healing taking place.
I want to start by saying that there is a lot of stigma, and when it comes to being an African woman, being an African girl, and immediately someone speaks up and says, "Oh, this happened to me," there is dismissal. Get dismissed, like, "Oh, that's irrelevant," or "You're bringing shame to your family, so keep quiet," things like that. And mostly, and for me, I never even knew what storytelling was. I thought that something happens to you, you know, you keep it to yourself because shame yourself or your family, you don't want to look bad in the community. And then coming to the United States, I guess in my own ways, I started dealing with my traumas and the things I had gone through. And so being part of the immigrant story allowed me to really tell and express my story the way I wanted it to be. You know, there is no, oh, you have to stay this way so that people accept you. You have to behave this way so people talk to you better. And so I think storytelling is very powerful and important. And oftentimes in media and art, some parts, especially some, for example, the movie Sema, you find it getting criticized and, oh, you're showing too much violence. But no, in fact, it's reality. And the more stories are told about similar experiences, it creates credibility, right? Because when someone dismisses that woman or that girl who she, when there's not just one person, there's multiple people saying the same story, who share the same experiences, it creates like credibility. And I think that also brings results into like a movement and people trying to find a solution. And so, yeah, I think storytelling is a great, powerful tool.
Thank you. I agree. And for me, I guess for me, like watching Sema, some parts of it were really triggering in terms of the stories that I've heard from working in various parts of the world and working in family centers or sexual violence clinics, and how, just how similar some of these experiences of excruciating violence are, and the intense amount of shame and stigma that is also inflicted on survivors. So that part of Sema was really powerful for me to also watch. We have a question from the audience that maybe I'll just direct at you first, Johana, and then give you opportunity to add, Maud. But it says, Sema showed not just incidents of violence against women, but the culture of subjugation of women by husbands and fathers. How much progress can there be to eliminate violence against women in a culture that values them so little?
That's a great question. And I want to say that because if something happens in just one household, then that means it can get fixed, or that's just how it is. But when it happens in a whole country for generations, it becomes a problem, because that's not just that's just like culture repeating itself, but at the same time it's affecting the people and affecting generations, and so no one is able to prosper. And so I don't think there is one way to say, oh, no more patriarchy, no more no more oppression to women and all these things. But at the same time, I think that there are tools that could be used to I want to say liberate people in more ways. And that would be, I want to talk about mostly like education, because when especially in the movie Sema, when that lady took the Matumaini and the other lady into like a group and started to tell them about sexual violence and how it happens to many women, and that I think that education on that type of level, knowing that this has been happening, so it's a stigma in our community, but if we come together, this is how we can fix it. And so I think that has to start happening on a local level. And also, and I think it's a culture that people practice, but I want to say that those same people can work to change it. And so it's not just like, oh, we need people to come from outside and help us fix our problem. I think it's the people themselves who have to start working towards fixing it.
I would like to add the fact that when we are talking about the culture, it wasn't the case before in the territory of DRC. I mean, that this is colonization that brings that kind of patriarchal, vision of the family. For us, mother, they are the pillar of the society, of the family. And this is why everything is destroyed now in the east of the country in particular, because you have, when you destroy the woman, when you destroy the mother, you destroy everything else around. And of course, you can think that this is, far from the question, but I think that also we need to go back to our, identities, that we were what we were before the colonization, because everything, the religion and this patriarchal system that we have, it was not our way of thinking, and it was not our culture. We are Bantus, and most of DRC, and 80% of Bantus people, especially in DRC, it's very matriarchal. And when I say before, I can feel that very most that in my province, for example, that women are chief of the family. And so I think that the things can change, but maybe we should, go back to what we were before the colonization, and emancipate ourselves from what we live now. We still have a lot of oppression and of this of what we have lived during the colonization, which is probably not finishing in the reality.
I understand that, right? That Sema is made from a collective. And so I'm curious, especially just following what you are talking about, Maud, how you think Sema has the power perhaps to change some of this dialogue, but also, perhaps even change the current culture.
It's a movie, so the sensibilization that is made with the movement. Of course, if we go to each villages and you explain to people, and you make that movie accessible to a lot of people, I'm pretty sure that a lot of person will understand. But the problem that we face in DRC is, we are fighting against a big machine, and I don't think that just a movie can change the situation. Of course it's not possible. It can make change the mentalities. When you talk to each person in each village, maybe it's possible to go and do and make sensibilizations everywhere in the country. But I mean, where the rape is coming from? They are destroying the vagina, but to make profit. And as I said before, I don't think that you can in 45 minutes when we have decided to put the focus really on what the survivors face, and but when you live there, when you are there, you understand that what happened is and what's happening right now is too much for you, too much for just even the Congolese to change it. It's what's happening now in DRC. It's an untold story in the mainstream medias. In 10 years, in 20 years, what you will, learn from the situation, from the conflict, will be another story. And you will maybe learn that Rwanda is really an example of democracy, of reunification, economic hegemony, but no one will talk about about how everything was organized, including kill millions of people in DRC to make that economic hegemony. No one will talk about it. And when you talk about it, you are in danger. So it's very difficult. There is a lot of parameters. There is a lot of things that you have to understand. The fact that to fight what is happening in DRC, you have to point, the conductors of all this conflict. And the conductors, where are they? They are in West countries. This is, the motor of everything happening in DRC now is this run for the profit, this extreme profit, and I don't know if we can change it like that. It will take a lot of time. I understand when people say that we are responsible of what is happening to us, that we have to wake up, and in a sense I can agree. We should be auto-determined, but when you start to include in your analysis that this machine that you are fighting against is not just 1 or 2 or 3 small countries which have borders with DRC, but the biggest multinational of which these neighboring countries are, only the puppets and the performers. So you start to realize that this fight is maybe too big for us as Congolese, and in that sense, I really think that it's interesting to think maybe about Pan-Africanist solution. This is very complicated in few minutes to explain everything, and I don't want to be misunderstood by people who are with us today. But it's just that the plan and everything that's happening in DRC, who is a country which was created to be, because inside the border of DRC now, you have everything that the world needs, to make profits. Because now we are talking about the coltan, the cobalt to make the phone devices and everything, but we have gold, we have diamond, we have oil, we have everything that the world need now to make profits. And so, it's hard. We are fighting against something very big. Maybe what can change is the situation is, to say that we can fight other countries, for example, having nuclear bomb. I mean, we cannot. I'm not for that. But when you have nuclear bomb, you can fix the rules and maybe protect your people. And I don't see another solution except if we include maybe other countries from the continent. And it's a really complex situation. I really encourage all the person who wants to understand and have all the elements to put in their analysis to read, but out of the mainstreams books or documentary that you can see in the mainstream media, as I can say, yeah.
Well, clearly, we need to have another discussion.
Yeah.
Following this. So we have a few more questions from the audience. Just, I guess, elaborating on this. Are there men in the society who are also challenging the patriarchy, and what is actually happening there? And that maybe, I don't know if either of you want to take that question.
What was the question? You're cutting off.
Yeah.
You.
Are there men in the society who are also challenging the patriarchy, and what's happening?
So for me, I could use my mom's family as an example. So my mom is from a family of 12 kids, and they have 4 boys. My mom is the second oldest, and so she used to tell us that when they were growing up, it was like they lived in a huge house in Congo. But so the mom, my grandma and my mom and her sisters would go and cook and fetch the water and do everything and cook. And then cook everything, serve the meal. And then my granddad would go sit in the house with my uncles. And then my grandma, my mom and her siblings would go and serve my grandpa and my uncles. And then so the boys would eat in the house, the women would go eat outside and sit down on the floor. And then so the people sitting in the house would be the boys and my granddad, and they would sit on the tables, watch TV, have a good time. They need water, they need soda, they need anything, they would call outside, so for the women to basically do everything. And this was when they were still growing up as kids. And so so today my uncles are not married. They're meaning that they're not successful in life. And so every time I talk to my mom about the situation, is that they grew up with that perspective, saying, as a man, all I can do is all I have to do is just make decisions in the household, and then I don't know, have kids, have a wife that will do everything else for me. And basically I'm superior, and that women have to like do everything for me. And so I think with that being said, is that from the very first stage, men are born and nurtured into this perfect, like into this toxic masculinity, where it's like, you're the man, this is how you're gonna be. You're the woman, and this is what you're subjected to, right? And it takes a lot for a woman to realize that I can actually do something different and go somewhere else. But because how I've seen it is that when people are children, they grow up with basic skills that they practice every single day. When you tell a kid not to do this or to do this every single time, that's what they grow up believing. And so I think most Congolese men or Congolese boys that I've met have grown up with that perspective, where it's like they don't see the problem. They don't see it as patriarchy is a problem. And they see, oh, this is just normal. This is how my dad taught me how to behave. This is how my uncle behaved. So why would I be any different? And so I haven't encountered any African men, any Congolese men in particular, who are saying patriarchy is a problem. Because for them, I think is they haven't seen the other side. They haven't been pushed down to that level of saying, oh no, this is a problem that we need to fix.
Thank you, Johana. So we have another question to you, Maud. How did the film get produced? How did you get started? And then how long did it take to get it produced and distributed?
All right. So we have made a fundraising with the movement. And we had the chance to work with an amazing director that she has bring her own technical team, and they haven't asked a lot of money. So it was it was great to work with them, because they did an amazing job. But of course, they have also allowed us to make this incredible movie with small amounts. But we have asked for help. I mean, there was some groups and NGO or organization that helps us with the fundraising money to make this movie. And so we have made like 3 weeks of shooting, and then the post-production, it was like 3 or 4 months, more than 4 months, yeah. It was sometimes not easy, but it was an amazing experience for everyone. And of course, when you are, member of the movement, and so suddenly you became, you are involved in a technical team of making a movie. And yes, it was for everyone, it was an incredible experience. For the survivors of the movement, they were, you know, really the leaders of everything. And so even the director, she had to, you know, to involve all the members that wanted to participate to every, you know, step of the realization of the movie. It was really, really interesting.
I think either of you could also take this question. What about teenage survivors? How can civil society or women organizations advocate for them and help them find agency, tell their stories, name the violence, and call out the perpetrators?
Johana, if you want to start.
No, you can go ahead.
All right. So with the Panzi Foundation, which is the foundation of Dr. Denis Mukwege in DRC, we have more than 50 projects that take care of survivors, different type of projects. And we have a project especially for teenage survivors. It is special. Sometimes the physical trauma is so big that they will not have, you know, kids in the future, that and that they have to, you know, to imagine another future. But we have a lot of different, you know, training and psychological therapy that is put in place to help them to you know, to reborn. I can say it like that. We have, for example, this is not only for teenager victims, but we have the musical therapy that works a lot when they can express themselves and you know, and sing and create songs with the lyrics, especially on their what they have experienced, or just a poem with the, you know, metaphoric words. You have also the dancotherapy. You know, we have a lot of different programs where very you know, specific for young women or teenager, or you have also a program for kids. This is, you know, the approach is very different. You know, if you are a teenager, of course the approach, the psychological approach will be kind of different if you are a kid, and if you are an adult, and if you are an old person. So we have that kind of, we have, for example, the safe house, where teenager with kids born of rape, or they can go there, they can be safe, and they can try to you know, have trainings, learn how to read, how to write for those who cannot do it, or maybe informatic lessons. We have a lot of different programs. So but it's a big challenge, especially for teenager and kids.
Yeah. And you're nodding, Johana. You have anything to add to that? I'm curious if you, you know, if you're aware of other organizations that are doing work, or if there's things happening, you know, here at home in your own community that are also, you know, supporting change and providing, providing opportunities for teenagers or women or other survivors.
So for me, I want to say that program, Maud, you're talking about, I think that's really amazing. I've never heard of any of it, and I think it's really important that it's there. I think that most, especially young women, really need that. And for me, I just turned 20, so I'm not taking a teenager, but I want to say that Yeah, especially in my situation, I was sexually assaulted for multiple years when I was still a kid. And going through my teenage years, I've never dealt with it. I've never known how to deal with sexual assault, how to nothing, because I've basically growing up, I've moved from place to place, and every time it's like you have to basically adapt to a new environment. So there's not really that time for me to take that time to mentally um, deal with my traumas. And so for me, I'd want to say I really personally for myself, I'm still trying to figure out how um to yeah, yes, I was medically able to get supported medically, but mentally in other ways too, I'm still dealing with what I went through. And so I know that in Kenya there's a specific organization called IAS, and I remember we sometimes would go there and they were providing resources for especially refugees from Uganda and Congo um, um, who are victims of sexual assault, and provide resources and medical supplies for them. And I think that's amazing. That was in Kenya, and it was helping the refugees who were there. And so, yeah, I don't really have a particular answer.
You don't have a particular answer, but you're also really highlighting the need for care that is also on the move. Mm-hmm. And as we see the migrant population and the refugee population increase, and there's more and more people who are crossing borders and fleeing violence, and lack of looking for access to health services. You're highlighting the need for mental health care that is also transferable over those borders. I wonder like how the digital world maybe will be able to help and support something like that. But I think it's challenging enough in a refugee camp, I would imagine, right, to seek out care, to find a health post, to feel safe enough to share your experience.
And also feel safe enough to be around other men.
Yeah,
and because like moving to all those places, and mentally I know that it was my own family member who hurt me like this. And so how anyone else around me, when I go to school, when I take the bus, things like that. And so there is a lot of components that go into it. And there is not just one solution. But I think that every effort that people put into like donating or funding organizations in Congo and other countries is really beneficial, because in one way or the other, someone is benefiting from it indirectly.
Any nodding, Maud? Anything to add to that?
I think that yes, what we should very focus on now is the mental health. The medical help is very important. I mean, but this is right now, but when you finish that, you live with that trauma all your life. And sexual violence, even if you were to, even you can keep that inside you all your life. And even when you can give that to the next generation, if you don't break the silence. So this is a transgenerational trauma. And if you don't break the silence, if you still keep that as a secret, you cannot see the future and be okay. So really the mental health, it's in the whole world. I think that we can say that one in 3 women women faced, you know, sexual harassment or violence and incest, everything. So it's a lot, but it's in the whole world, and there is no barrier of you know, the countries or the social the social, I can say, level, or, and so it's very important to be sure that everyone can have one day access to that, because sometimes they don't even know what happened to them. They don't even know that they have lived something like that. When you were 2 years old, or maybe, for example, those babies that I have, you know, filmed sometimes in the operating room for you know, a scientific project, 6 months old. I mean, when you have lived that at 6 months old, what are you going to remember at 20 years old? But something happened, and you really have to go through a therapy. It's, you know, it's
yeah, I mean, you know, exactly what you're saying. Sexual violence doesn't have borders, right? Like it's happens to everyone around the world. It happens to men, it happens to women, it happens to children, and there's really no way also to equate the trauma that an individual might experience from that sexual assault, but also the impact, as you're saying, on, you know, the generations to come, and even when it's an assault that isn't remembered, that it still lives in our bodies, and how to help support each other in raising up those voices and believing survivors and telling survivors that what happened to them is not their fault, and, you know, and finding a way to healing through that. And I think Sema touches on all of those, you know, elements, even what Johana was saying earlier about and when you were talking about the patriarchy, and, you know, the end of Sema, you see this small boy, right, who is a child of rape, saying, you know, I'm gonna carry these things, mama. Like, I'm going to do things differently. I'm going to do better. And so you have that moment of, you know, hope. And I think what I'm hearing you both say, and certainly from my own witnessing of women and girls and men and boys experiencing sexual trauma, is that these stories do get told, and these voices are heard, and the healing, you know, in our hearts and our minds and our bodies does get to take place. Any final words from either of you? We have just a couple of seconds left. Well, thank you both very much for participating. I'm also grateful to be a part of the conversation and get to meet both of you. And thanks for being here at a crazy hour to join us also, Maud. And we're gonna turn our conversation back to Ruth Ann to wrap us up. But thanks again for sharing your experiences with all of us.
Thank you. Thank you for receiving us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Also, Maud-Salomé and Johana and Aerlyn, thank you so much. This was just an incredible conversation, and I just think it's amazing how this strange COVID moment has allowed us to just bring the two of you together, bring the three of you together in a conversation that we never would have been able to have otherwise, and just allowed us to really connect with this film. And Maud-Salomé, again, it's just such a privilege to have you here being able to speak out of this experience and of being part of this work. And we really just want to wish you the best in your studies, Johana, and I'm so thrilled that you are bringing your voice and your life and your perspective into the world to make the kinds of changes that you want to see. It's so inspiring, and just want to wish you well in every aspect of your journey. And Maud-Salomé, also thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom, the depth of your experience, and wish you also the best with Sema and in all your endeavors with the Mukwege and Panzi Foundation and family. And please take our best and take our thanks to all of the survivors and the team that produced this movie, because we know that this was just a tremendous act of witness and of healing. And we are so grateful that it was made, that it was shared, and we really wish for this film to touch many, many people around the world and fulfill all of its goals. So
I was very happy to meet you guys, and very happy to hear you, Johana. You are incredible.
Thank you. I'm very impressed. I want to say you're very smart, and I really like you. Like hearing you speak makes me think more about what I want to do in the future and what impact I want to have in our community back home in Congo. So thank you.
Great.
Good. And thank you all to our audience. Thank you for your questions. We're sorry that we didn't quite get to all of them. This is a conversation that clearly could go on for much longer, but we want to really thank you for your participation. There is more information on our website, neveragaincoalition.org/rising up. There's a landing page for each of our films, including Sema, and we have more information about all of our partner organizations and also ways that you can take action and learn more about Congo and all of these beautiful films that we've been able to share with you. So thank you all so much, and we hope you'll join us for our next series.